In this recording, Toteras discusses evolution and creation, critical thinking, and the concept of authority.
And bitterness never makes good poetry, because bitterness is just as dogmatic as cynicism, as any of the. It's like this.
Yeah.
It only sees the bad, where the idiot only sees the good. And what one wants to do is to be able to see it what it is, as much as what it is, as opposed to what you think it is, right? And that's really difficult. Because if you really want to read about love, you don't read about the love. Are we on?
Yeah.
We don't read about the love that psychologists develop for us. We read the love, if we want to get close to it, we read the love of a poet, when a poet's in love, right? Because what he's doing is he's examining his feelings. He's examining not only what his eye sees, but he's examining what he feels after he sees these things. He's examining the feelings of his inner world. Yeah. That's a very difficult thing to do, and very few people ever have that gift. Now, what's the strange thing about it is, like people who have talent for something, it's so natural that they don't think that they should do anything. It's not even an issue. It's the people who don't have the talent that make it, because they put in a lot of hard work. Now, all things require hard work. To make a house requires hard work. Everything requires hard work. To make a beautiful piece of art requires a lot of work, man. A lot of evaluation, a lot of choosing, a lot of decision making, a lot of everything, and it's very stressful to do anything other than just lay under the sun, man, So a psychologist could never tell you what the love was about, because he has no talent. What he had is a lot of assiduous hard work that he went through school, and he got a PhD, and now that PhD says, in modern times, you see, at one time it meant a doctor of philosophy, but in modern times it means scientist. Scientist. That's what it means now. It's scientist, PhD, something magic about it, like the oath the president takes. After he takes it, he knows everything, right? The same thing with the PhD. After he gets it, he knows everything, just absolutely everything. So he puts down their PhD, and it's about love. Well, he knows nothing about love. He might know what he felt like when he was in love with someone. But what was interesting, let me tell you, what's interesting is that no matter what his viewpoint of the world is, or how he places himself into that viewpoint, he still feels the pains of that come from the unity with a woman. Right? There is something mysterious, not so mysterious that it comes from the hocus pocus land. It's mysterious because it comes from the dim past, so far back in the past, that at that time we were arboreal creatures. We were creatures up in the treetops, running around up there like monkeys, right? We were other people. We weren't the people that we are now. But before that, we were, according to the evolutionist, we were salamanders, and we were fish, and we were this, and we were that. Don't you think these creatures had their own sexual habits that are inside our gene pools today? If in the process of being born, we go through these stages of evolution as they, the scientists, tell us, I'm merely referring to them. They tell us that this is what happens, right? Now, if this is so and this takes place, then I might say that through the various stages of my development, I have in me different sexual habits and patterns, right? Yes. Let me use the word pattern instead of habit, because by getting rid of one, habit is so connected to will, to wanting, to desire. Habit means that I have a lot of them. Habit could mean that a human being is just one collection of bad or good habits, right?
Right.
So let us get rid of the word habit and go into the word pattern, because by using the word pattern, now we fall into the word of randomness, the words of chaos, various different words that presuppose that this is connected to some scientific type of thinking. So it's safer to stay there and say that there must be patterns in us that have been developed through aeons of evolution, right? Now, these patterns you just don't throw out, get rid of. There's things that are there no matter what the evolutionary process is. There is a trace of them somewhere. So it might be that through this time evolution, becoming very objective, we wanted to find out, why do we do the things we do? That's all. Now, how do we demonstrate them? How do we isolate what is the things that we do becomes now a project. Because we might say, what is it that we do? What is it that we do? I get up in the morning and my process through the morning becomes so... My process in the morning, let us interrupt for a moment here. Let us interrupt. The morning is so automated, it's so automatic, it's so unobserved by me, that when somebody tells me, why are you doing like that? These little things that I do before I shave or the way I look in the mirror or something. If somebody was to ask me, I don't have the foggiest. But if I was to say, the study of a 50-year-old man shaving himself, the study of a 50-year-old man, lives here, there, we want to find out how he shaves. It's a study that Gillette's paying, number one, to beat some of its taxes, and number two, to allow itself to sound humanitarian as it contributed money to some university psychology department to find out how men at a certain age shave, right? They want to know this. Why do they want to know this? Because they want to be able to sell something to them. So there's a lot of observations that are made with profit in mind on people. Now, whether these observations have been stacked from the beginning by saying 50-year-old men shave closer to the mirror than a 30-year-old man, or a 50-year-old man shaves farther away from the mirror, not having to look at his face too often, you know what I mean? Maybe the room a little too dark so don't see all the line. These you don't know. There's a lot of things that go on in there that they suppose that everybody does this, plus or minus 3, 4, 5% for individuals that don't shave or what have you not. Well, don't you think, or would it be too far in your own imagination to suppose that maybe this goes on sexually also? Like there's things that are done that we just don't know anything about, and all the PhD-isms in the world really aren't going to get any closer to it than we will to some outside galaxy in our lifetime. I mean, the thought of it is just absolutely bizarre. To say that we haven't involved ourselves genetically through a genetical evolution, and not to say that there is genes in us that demands certain things, that demands of us certain things, that demands ourselves chemically, electromagnetically, through the DNA process, through processes that they'll never discover in a million years because it is so far into the dim past. We don't know whether we were created or evolved. But these two arguments are really meaningless to each other because they both come from the same place. If you were created, we would have to suppose that some great creator created you. If you were evolved, somebody had to give that thing a kick at the beginning to get it started. Right. So along the line, both of these things have the Big Bang Theory in their head. Boom, there it was. He did it, right? It just didn't come from nowhere. It came from some sort of design. Right. So both of them have a design process in them. If you look at one or the other, when it was all started, one might say, raise the question, when it all started, was there some end in view in the design? Was there some teleological end? Was there something that was destined to be, that it was started here and destined to be that? These arguments reach themselves into theological speculations. They're not really the concern of ours here at the moment. What we're concerned really is if we carry certain patterns, certain genetical needs, say, that have evolved along with us to the present time into a period of civilization that has become sterile, not because human beings don't have feelings, because what it requires of the human being is something that the human must become totally objective, and when you become too objective, you become totally impersonal. You become an impersonal person. But now still these sexual drives, sexual patterns of attraction, they're still there. But because I have become objective, or I have become impersonal, for me to connect with you now, I have to go through a whole series of opening up various folders and files, right? So it somehow or other analogizes itself to the activities of a computer. So it might be now that we see ourselves as opposed to electrical people. We might see ourselves now as computerized people and analogize our thinking, our systems, our patterns of information, the way it's stored in the computers. Well, that's an interesting idea. I'm not going away from my sexual argument. It's an interesting idea to compare man now to the computer because it gives us some new insight as to how man might operate. And the behaviorists are really excited about this, and the critical thinkers are excited about this. And all the subjects that purport to baloneyism. See, all the subjects that purport to this malarkey, trying to make themselves, in order to justify their own authority, they have to make themselves into PhDs. Now listen to this, a PhD on critical thinking. Critical thinking, the desire to make you as objective, as so totally impersonal that you might be able to immediately see any kind of scam in this ultimate purity that you've created as an environment in your own head. This is my definition of baloneyism. This is how I define academic scams. I don't want to be critical. I merely want to point out that I have suspicions about subjects that purport to talk about sex, love, or that area that only belongs to the poet. To the poet. I'm not a philosopher. I am not this. I am not that. What am I? I am what I'm saying at that minute and no more. If I say that I am this, that's what I am at that moment. If I say I am something else, well, I'm not the only one who does that.
Right, everybody does.
A man goes out into the academic circuit and stands on the lectern and propounds with great authority while other people are scurrying to put every little tidbit he says, every little emphasis, because when they analyze this and reevaluate it and then reanalyze it and then reevaluate it again, this pause that he made becomes an important factor in the analysis of the whole piece. Because definitely a man who can sit up there, everything is gauged. There is nothing that is not put into for scrutiny. It's all prepared, and he does. That's because he's so authoritative, and you can't question authority because authority is akin to religion. Authority, God speaks with total authority. He speaks with, when he created with total, mankind understands the concept of authority. What right did you have to be king, they used to ask the king, and he said, by the divine right. That divine right was up to a couple of 100 years ago, for Christ's sakes. It wasn't that long ago. The divine right to rule, what? The English had a revolution concerning James's the first demand, that the divine right of kings. How you come to become king? By the divine right. So I mean, this divine authority is not that far away in our growing up. Your father told you what authority was. Yes. You gotten to understand what authority was. Authority is how civilization works. Yes. Without authority, civilization can't be. I'm saying civilization, civilis, people living in houses. Houses, because of their very nature, create streets. Houses, by their very nature, create alleys. The activities of a house creates garbage. Alleys, garbage, people, darkness, shadows. All these things create other things. What is it that they create? Whatever it is that civilizations create. People who live in tents don't act like people who live in cities. People who live in caves don't act like people who live in cities. People who live somewhere else on islands don't act like people who live in cities. Why? Because somehow or other structure affects the way people live. Structure affects the way they live, right? So in a civilization, you have to have certain things that must take place, or the whole place will blow up. Like if all the electricity goes out in a place like, say, New York or San Francisco, the people would kill themselves in the streets long before anything else ever happened. There's 1 million cars out in the street. Can you imagine what it'd be like with no stop signs?
Yeah, right.
If you just plugged out all the stop signs at 5 o'clock in the afternoon in any big city, that's it. You don't need germ warfare. You need some good electrician that knows how to pop the fuse. That's all you need. But because we've become so impersonal, because we've become so objectified, all our understanding now must come through objectivity.
Thus, the need for the great scientist who comes in.
Not only the need for the great scientist, our only hopes for the great scientist. Our total hopes for our salvation is in the hand. You know, the last thing in Pandora's box of ills, Pandora means everything in here is a gift. Pan, all. Dora means gifts. So Pandora in classical Greek means gifts, all the gifts. They gave all the gifts of the world. But a gift, like a gift is something awful goes with it. In in India, when they wanted to bankrupt you, they gave you a present, a white elephant. You could never work that elephant. It was sacred. You couldn't work it. You couldn't do anything with it. The only thing you could do with it is feed it. But the best of foods for an elephant, because it was sacred, right? And that's you were bound to do. So I didn't like you, so I gave you 2 or 3 of these sons of bitches. When kings wanted to wipe out their feudal lords, they didn't want them. They would go venture there as a party. And the king would bring his retinue with him, which would consist of maybe 300 or 400 people. And you would have to feed him for as long as he stayed, until he bankrupted you, so there was no fucking food left. So you see, civilization has other ways that it operates than a society that might have been more primitive. Now, to the point where it really wasn't even a family yet. There was just creatures like monkeys that have a family structure, but their structure hasn't reached a state of being together in a civilized way, where a community begins, that a family reaches into and becomes a community, and the community becomes a state, and the state becomes a nation. Some kind of other movements and ecologies that seem to magnify themselves as there's more people on the earth. As cities become bigger, other things manifest themselves. The same way as you throw detergents in the ocean, and because of all the minerals and the movement of the ocean and the constant shaking and different pressures and temperatures and the sun beating on it, creates monsters out there, man. Creates chemical monsters that have yet to rear their goddamn head. You know these stories of the serpents and the monsters in the sea? Don't you think that this has come to pass? Don't you think that out there these detergents and these chemicals are not creating monsters that will come out of the sea and devour you? Man, are you that stupid that you can't see that? Are you that dumb that you can't see that the whole process of destruction is built within us? That the process of destroying ourselves is in our genes? Like the summer destroys the spring when it comes, man, and the autumn destroys the summer. Destroys them totally. Everything is dead and it moves on again. And yet it comes back again cyclically. It comes back like there's some kind of cyclical truth that's taking place. That doesn't have a linear truth, like we go from truth to truth to truth to truth. Right? This is what modern time does for the sake of advancement. It goes from truth to truth to truth. And what it says is, no, these are conditional truths. They're truths until proven wrong. So the fact of truth itself is questionable the way they see it. Because if we say that truth is a verb and it keeps moving along, changing itself, people might criticize that because it says it sets no standard.
I see.
It sets no pinnacle as to that to achieve and that to be. As if we were to achieve something. As if we were headed, you see, as if we were headed for somewhere, that it was all designed. It's the fact that it was all designed that doesn't allow us to see the real sexual expression within us. It's because we deny the fact, or we accept the fact. If we accept the fact that we were designed, that means that all that we have at this very moment was designed. My understanding, I have no more understanding about what I'm doing now than I did when I was 15. I don't have any understanding of what I'm doing. I have an understanding of what I've done. I don't really have an understanding of what I'm doing unless I've done it 1,000 times before. And it would mean that it have to be something that had been repeated over and over and over and over. Its recurrence must have been over and over and over. It would have to have what the philosophers call periodicity, that it continuously recurs. It's in a constant state of recurrence all the time, cyclically. It doesn't come, leave, and never comes back again. But because of its repetition, I have come to be that repetition. I have come to be that repetition. If I get up at a certain time every day and I do everything the same way at a certain time, my body is so geared to it, it's like doing a kata, man. I'm so in tune to that motion that I've picked up the energies of that motion. Now anything involves itself in my energies of doing that motion, that them whole series of events, upsets me. But I have to go to the toilet at a certain time, so anybody's in the toilet, I have to knock. I got to get in there. You know that. It's 6:15. I have to take a shit. I got to be the hell out of here by 6:20. That gives me 10 minutes to take a shit and wash up, clean up and flush the toilet. I got to get in there to take a shit. Yeah, I mean, this is a problem of civilization. This is the problem of a toilet. There's a man that I know who studied all his life toilets. He wrote a very definitive book on toilets. I don't want to publicize him, so I'll keep him cool. If you want him, ask me after, and I'll suggest the book. Okay. He spent his whole life studying how people piss and how they evacuate. He spent all his life doing that. He measured the urine flows and how far they hit the wall. And he designed toilets, man. He designed toilets for big buildings, corporate buildings. He became a millionaire. I knew the bastard. And he became a millionaire from his studies of the toilets. Who would think of that? Yeah. But it's an important factor.
In modern times, you bet.
What's the most important factor on a big building, man? How do you flush the toilet? How do you get up to where you're going? And without the elevator, that couldn't have been. And without the development of hydraulic pumps strong enough to move the sewers around, if you drop something from up high, the water actually stops in the pipes.
Is that right?
Oh, yeah. It creates such turbulence that the turbulence wraps itself right into the sides. It creates frictions, and these frictions bring the whole flow to a stop. So you get big airlocks inside of pipes. You get a building that's 100 stories tall, you know, and you try to flush a toilet. You just don't flush a toilet 100 stories, you know. Nor do you open up the tap and water comes up 100 stories. You know, zoop, there it is. I mean, these are complex plumbing problems that have been created by the necessity of having big buildings. Have I wandered off? No, I haven't wandered off. I moved into civilization, the arguments of civilization. I haven't wandered anywhere. Within these arguments of civilization, man and woman is here. The same as when the arboreal theories were propounded, man and woman, or female, male, were up on the top of the trees doing the same thing that they're doing now under the trees. They're doing the same thing under the trees. One time I stumbled into an area of cypresses at night, and the lights went on from a radio station that was by, and the whole place was just filled with people fornicating, making love, all under the trees. Where at one time these same creatures were up on the top of the trees fornicating. What time has done to man is his fornication left the treetops and went now to the tree bottom, to the where the trunk is at, close to the trunk, because this is where God found Adam and Eve at the bottom of the tree, not up at the top of the tree, plucking an apple, right? They were at the bottom. The evolution of man from the top of the tree to the bottom, from an ape to a man, had now taken place. The ape, the female ape, fornicates like hell. Oh, Jesus, he's the most promiscuous of the primates is a chimpanzee. Female, she'll fornicate with 20 or 30 males in the daytime. Where the Chuck baboon, he has his herd. Nobody gets in there. He has his own tribe. But not with the chimpanzees. They don't care. The male will sit there and look at it going on. They're natural voyeurs. Yeah, they are. They're natural voyeurs. They're attracted by what they're looking at, and they don't seem to get all heated up over it. So what it is like we know that there's only 1% DNA difference between us and the chimp. 1%. Yeah, we're 99% DNA-wise the same as the chimp. What makes us? What's that 1% about? Somewhere along the line, the patterns of sexual attraction, the patterns of sexual possession, all these things, the pattern of how a woman chooses the mate. Because a woman, even to this day, that's what rape's about. A woman was made without her consent, right? So, I mean, this thought of a woman without her consent goes all the way back to the beginning. The woman is the one who allows you to make it with her. If the woman don't want you to make it with her, there is no way you're going to make it with her. I mean, to the absolute. You never open up her legs. You'll never get it there. I mean, so I mean, at one time it might have been that women got rid of men every now and then, got rid of the male, like the chimpanzee does, in order to ensure a very strong, productive male. And when you think of maturity and death, probably at a certain period of time must have been 12 to 15, 16 years old at the very most.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Maturity and birth were, females were breeding at 7 and 8 years old. There's tribes today, African tribes, and there's Indian tribes in Peru who have a birth rate of 8, 9-year-old. One was 6-year-old even,
Yeah.
that was, so I mean, they're aware that the female can breed at a very early age. So mankind was really breeding. So what you have is, you have a society, see, the ones who marry and have children become, at any society, become not the economic middle class, but they become the generational middle class, right? They become the generational middle class. They're not in their father's home, they're in their home, they have children, they're starting a new generation. So you have that middle class there, maybe at 12, 14 years old, very young people, right? Not totally sophisticated, not totally, if the brain develops itself, it goes through a developmental process. So they bred early, and the things that drove them to breeding, I'm talking about periods before there were ceremonies. See? Like anthropologists studying the ceremonies of a society are really studying that society when that society puts ceremonies together. They're really studying the advanced end of that society. They're not studying it where it was before the ceremonies were. Because you can't tell me that man had ceremonies that were as complex as ours from the beginning. You can see that this has just like been developed from period to period to period.
Right.
So what's taking place in our world now is the meaning for our ceremonies is being lost. And soon they'll have like Halloween night. Halloween night was when you paid respect to the souls, right? The souls came. It's All Hallows, and the souls come, and you leave food outside for the souls to come, and then it was a religious holiday, But now it's a prankster's holiday, a trick or treat. See, the meaning for the ceremony that came undone, and what you have now is you have a social event that takes place with any applicable thought to it that doesn't really make any idea. If the thing is still there, but you can apply anything you want to it. So you have a civilized society that is now losing the meaning of all its ceremonies, and soon it will lose these ceremonies totally and merely have ceremonies that take place in an objective world, whatever these ceremonies are. Man, ceremonies like signing a check, ceremonies like going to a counselor for a divorce, or ceremonies of whatever. These are the ceremonies that modern man is picking up in order to do with modern man's new values. I love to use the word virtue, but what I mean by virtue, I mean something that is of value. Can literally go back. That's why we love the subject, because we can exist in the subject imaginatively. Right. If we existed in the subject merely rationally, reasonably, we would have nothing but arguments. We would have heuristic arguments. We would have arguments of blowing each other off the saddle, of trying to prove that I'm right.
One-upsmanship.
Trying to prove that I'm right, as opposed to allowing the possibilities to guide us. No right, no wrong. The possibilities, man. Mm-hmm. The constant possibilities, the different ways of looking at things, the different ways of making connections to them. It don't make any difference if we're right or wrong. What difference does it make? But the world is going to change. The world is changing to the worst anyway. So anything that we do could only be better than worse. We couldn't do anything that could harm this now. Because the dragons are coming out of the sea as detergent, man. We threw what we thought harmless crap into the ocean, and the ocean has been jarring it and cooking it. Now these monsters are coming up in the guises of detergents and soap bubbles. They're killing all the creatures in the sea. I mean, the whole planet is going through some kind of destruction as if it was inside of us. And it's interesting that the thought of the sexual world being tantamount and closest to death, like the French have la petite mort, the death after sex.
Well, after orgasm.
After your orgasm, you feel
the little death.
The little death.
Little death.
So you see that whole activity is an activity that brings you close to that, like the Spaniards in the bullfights emphasize that. It's a whole sexual orgy that's taking place. Because we consider in modern times orgy to be purely sexual in a sexual connection. But orgy in the classical times meant a big celebration, orgia.
Oh, interesting.
So what you have is a celebration that takes place at that moment. And that celebration between life and death. And it brings all the passions, all the juices, all these primordial things that were there before man had ceremonies. Now the thing is, like, you find mythologists not pointing to any specific one mythologist, but all mythologists are dealing with things to a certain point when there was myth. Already you're looking at what? You're looking at a very civilized society, any society that's had a myth. Because myths are connected as different from story. The Greeks has two words for stories, mythologia and historia, history and mythology. The thing is that mythology is connected to religion. That's what makes it mythology. And history is not connected to religion, it's connected to events. Events related to other events. The Greek then had another problem. He said, how did events come to be? And then his argument was what? They come to be by luck? By physics? What else they come to be?
By technology. Right?
By technology, yeah. Events move through these various three stages. And in these three stages of events, the historian looks at what? He looks at the happenings of events, just underlying middle event and precipitating event as the causatives of all other events.
Right. He
right?
All the causes.
Now, if this was true, it would mean that these events had laws to them, right? So every event that ever takes place has a special law to it involved, if we were to look at history like that. Now, this is looking at history the way the Jew looks at history. But if you looked at history the way Herodotus and Thucydides looked at history, you would see that they looked at it psychically. They looked at history coming back to where it was again, psychically. The psychical phenomenon was taking place summer, fall, winter, spring,
I think
death,
Spengler picked up
life,
on that,
yeah.
don't you think?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because you have a whole period of historians that pick up the organic view of history, that mankind, that cultures. See, does a historian look at cultures or does he look at mankind? Like Toynbee tries to look at mankind. People like Spengler are looking at cultures. These are cultural historians. And they feel that a culture takes on its youth, its middle age, its old age, and then finally a convenient method of looking at things, if you exclude from that analysis, if you exclude the movements that take place in outside, inside, around of events. An event is something that's been described by somebody. Like all this that's going on right now here, if you brought in 3 different artists, one was a painter, the other one worked with radio, and the other one was video, what would he select of all here that's going on this very minute to portray in a very systematic way?
That's interesting.
What part of life would he portray?
Yeah.
Then you have the historian that says, I'm going to portray it all. I'm going to portray this, and that as much as I can. So what he's portraying is a super eventual thing going on, 5 or 6 events going on at the same time. And you find that a lot in the historical analysis of certain periods. But this isn't history. This is what the historian imagined things were like in the past. You know, and through certain developments and certain views that he's taken, he's allowed himself the liberty of saying this is the way it was. So this is how mankind supports his reality, his existence, by feeling inside of him that he knows. That he knows this is the way it is. I mean, history shows this. Like, if you read history, what you're really reading is how imaginative people are about their past, you know?
That's true. You know, what funny thing, Jimmy, is that there was a time when, in my naivete, I thought that there existed objective, factual events. I mean, as they really were. And then there's how we perceive them. And the factual, objective event is more true, is more real, and the how we perceive it is less real. And now I realize it's the reverse. How we perceive it is the reality. That is our reality, how we perceive.
This falls, you see, into the areas in philosophy of idealism. See, we're idealistic in our philosophy. We're placing man as, because surely the universe would go on whether we perceived it or not.
Exactly.
I mean,
but I mean, our reality is the perception.
Yeah, that's the thing,
that's
see.
What I mean.
Our personal reality,
okay.
Our reality, not reality, but our reality. That's the thing that's been really lost, is the idea of that. Because remember the other day we were talking about the ideas? That they're made up of elements. And it's in the examination of these elements that you find out that an idea has inherent limitations to it. By the mere and you can't have an idea encompassing all. Because you can't have an idea unless inherent in the idea is what? Is what? Inherent in the idea. We have the morphology of it. We have the schematics of it.
Its outline.
That's right.
It needs its location.
It needs its location, its topography. And the thing is this.
Now you need to know what kind of idea it is.
That's right. Edon. Now here the problem, edon, in the kind, is also a derivative from the word to see, right? To see, the verb to see. And the verb to see is edon, right? To see. But now the Greek has 2 ways of seeing. It has edon to see and orasis to see, okay? Orasis, edon, when you're looking at specific things, to see something, right? To see what it is. When you have orasis, you see the universe. So the poet has orasis, where the scientist has edon, to see. This distinction, isn't made to you when you're studying philosophy, when you're studying pre-classical philosophy, because they don't see the distinction.
Say that again. The first is
To see, the
in
verb
the
to
ordinary
see.
sense.
To see, yeah.
Mhm.
To see, the verb to see.
Mhm.
I see. You see. In the conjugations of the verb to see. Now, to see is the element in the idea. Okay? The word idea comes from idon, to see.
Mhm. I see.
And it also means the kind of thing it is. All right? So idon became possible, categories became possible because of idon. It was one of the elements of the idea. And he had studied with the man for 20 years, for Christ's sakes, and he knew the arguments.
Aristotle?
Yeah, he knew the arguments. So inside of the kind, he easily placed a category. He easily placed a category when you have. Well, what's interesting is see the point that I'm trying to make here is it's the way we see things. It's with the ideas that we see them with.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
It's like a lens.
Yes.
Yes,
The
the
lens,
ideas that we see
exactly.
them with. And now, does these come from genetical? Because might be sensitive to certain colors. This is a genetical. Like I might be sensitive to certain reds or certain lines. But these are genetical factors that make me that way. I feel because of this Greek experience, that these Platonic experiences, that it has really put a stop to us. You know, we really distrust the poet. We have distrusted him for 2,500 years, you know.
That's for sure.
Oh yeah, since the time of Plato, man, we've distrusted him. Before it was the poet who gave us the truth. And after Plato, man, it was the PhD that gave you the truth, the man of reason, you know, the philosopher. Before that, you never hear the word philosopher. After that, you start hearing the word philosopher. Previous to that, the word philosopher meant somebody who was lazy. Philosophie. You know, he likes to sit under the fucking tree and daydream. It had the connotation of daydreaming.
Oh yeah, yeah. That, like you even say disparagingly, oh well, you're just philosophizing.
Yes.
Oh yeah, like in Greece, at the schools there is no subject as philosophy. There's philology, but there's no subject of philosophy because you can't in Greek philosophize.